Hello, everyone. I'm Loretta Graham, and you are listening to Safta Speaks Sanity. And thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Today, in my studio, I have seated next to me a talented, wonderful, fantastic woman who I've known for many, many years and who actually inspired me to become a storyteller, that was my first life. That's what I did. And I was a griot, Loretta the griot, and beside me is the griot woman, Charlotte Blake Alston herself. Hello, Charlotte. Thank you for
Loretta.
joining me.
My pleasure. This is just a wonderful reunion. It's been a while since we've been in the same space together.
And you still look so beautiful, so young, so vibrant, so exciting.
I think it's about doing what you love and having good genes.
Amen. Okay, and speaking of genes, we're going to talk about your mom, okay? Because I don't know if you want to just jump right into that.
Sure.
But first tell us what you do, and in case the audience doesn't know you.
I move in the world as a storyteller.
Okay.
And I present stories that come out of African and African American, generally, not exclusively, but generally African and African American oral traditions. So traditional folk tales, stories of history. A focus maybe on one individual whose achievements and accomplishments and recognition do not appear in our children's history books and textbooks. People like Bessie Coleman, who was the first American
aviator.
First American, yes. Mm-hmm. Black, white, male, female, before Amelia Earhart, first American to get an international pilot's license. Now, if you Google her,
I got my mouth open because I didn't realize.
Yes, you will see what I refer to as a qualifier. Yeah. It will always see she's the first African American to get an international pilot's license, which is true, but it implies or infers that there was someone before her. She was the first American to do it. Fantastic. And it happened because no one here would teach her to fly because she was black. Wow. All of the schools that she went to refused her. So she ended up having to go overseas. But those are the kinds of stories that I incorporate into my solo repertoire. I also work as a narrator. I work with right here in Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Orchestra. So this is my 26th consecutive season as host of a series that we do for our youngest listeners. Those are 3 to 5 year olds. And my 29th consecutive season as an independently contracted artist, working with the orchestra, narrating concerts or hosting concerts, sometimes even writing scripts. I actually last December had to write Gritty, the new hockey mascot,
Did you really?
into my script because he made an appearance on stage.
The Flyers.
So mascot.
Yeah.
So I also I do that. I collaborate with artists of other disciplines, with musicians and dancers, etc., the choreographers. So, and I also one of the things I take great pride in is that I've served as the voice of an online health training site.
Okay.
That is designed specifically for health workers who have clinics in rural parts of African countries, South America, India, etc. Okay. It's global health media.
Wow.
But if you go to the site, this is the voice you will hear when you hear the narration. So that it sounds like your grandmother, your auntie, something like this. Yes. So it's a range of things. So that's a sample.
Yes, I just love that. When I was doing my griot world, I actually did incorporate. I thought it was a West African.
I call it a generic. My generic.
Generic, and people even asked me what part of Africa, West Africa I was from.
Actually, there was.
And I thought, wow, I must be good, And you sounded
it's a compliment,
wonderful.
I suppose.
Yes,
it is. And people tap into this site from all over the world. So
wow.
There was someone who actually contacted my agent because she said, I believe she was from Nigeria. She said, my husband and I have a bet. We want to know where the narrator is from.
Oh.
He says she is from the Congo. I say she's from Senegal. My agent, where is she from? Philadelphia. Where are her parents from? But that's it. It is incredible work that this organization is doing, and so I'm just pleased to be part of it. The other aspect of what I do too is as working as a librettist, and that is crafting work that is going to be sung.
Oh, wow.
So I've worked with Singing City Choir here in the city. And
Crafting work that's going to be sung.
Yes.
Explain that.
So as I write, so for example, let's take the Commonwealth Youth Choir. So this is a children's choir. It consists of the Pennsylvania Girl Choir and the Keystone Boy Choir.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the youngest member might be third grade.
Okay.
In fact, one of them, who was the youngest one when I started working with them, just graduated high school and is off to Yale. But so I was approached by the woman who was the director at that time, and they are based in Germantown. And a parent had taken a tour of the Johnson House, the historic Johnson House on Germantown Avenue, and came back with some of the stories that was told by the docent there. And the idea was to take this story and craft a choral work around it. So for those who don't know, the Johnsons took their objections to enslavement to another level, and they chose to be a safe house.
Yeah.
So
that was sort of part of the Underground Railroad in
exactly.
Philadelphia.
So there's a story of how there was some suspicion, and they were hiding people, and officials came knocking on their door, and they were able to hide people up in a tiny space up in an attic. And it spoke to their putting their Quaker beliefs into action. So I craft this story. If I were to tell the story, I would craft it one way because I'm listening to how I would speak the story. As I craft the story, I have to keep in mind that first of all, I'm crafting for children. And I want them to sing words that they are able to understand, so that the language can't be too sophisticated.
Okay.
It has to be fairly simple, but not condescending. I have to be aware that someone is going to set this to music. In that instance, it was my brother, John. So I have to be mindful of the cadence of a phrase, the rhythm of a phrase, how I rhyme the phrase. So it's a different way of approaching writing when I know that I'm writing something that is going to be sung and not spoken, and especially not spoken by me in my voice.
Yes. You come from a very talented family. You mentioned your precious brother.
Yeah. So we come by that honestly. My mother was a church organist.
Okay.
Pipe organ. Wasn't no electric back then, as they say. She played piano, and as was really common in many African American households, a piano teacher was brought to your house, and you took piano lessons. And maybe later you went out to a place like Settlement Music School or whatever. But around 6 years old was when every child in the house began to take piano lessons, and I think my mother's reasoning was that at 6, that's when you begin to learn to read, for the most part. And if you can read letters and translate letters into sounds and words, you can read notes and transfer that to keys on the piano. Yeah. So everybody took piano lessons at 6 years old. I think half Mr. Roberts' income came from the Blake family on Saturdays. And then
that was your teacher, Mr. Roberts.
And as you got older, you were able to select a different instrument. So my sister was a singer at that time. John, somewhere around 5th, 6th grade, I suppose, chose violin. I had a younger brother who was a percussionist. My brother Alan, actually, he and his wife still perform together. They call themselves the Two of Us. Both of them play and sing.
Are they in this area?
They are in Atlanta, actually. Yeah, and they just recently released a CD of cover songs, which actually made it kind of high on somebody's list there.
Okay, well, tell us about it. What I mean, it's good to mention it, so maybe people want to check it out.
Yeah, well, it's Alan and Lita Blake.
Okay.
And they call themselves the Two of Us.
Yeah,
so if you Google the Two of Us or Google Alan.
Yeah. And do you have CDs out?
I do. You can actually just go to my website and order directly from the website.
So tell us your website.
It's my full name as one word, Charlotte Blake Alston, and that's Alston. So I'll spell the entire thing for you. Since it's Starbucks, my name gets spelled all kinds of ways.
Really?
CharlotteBlakeAlston, all as one word. or you can just write Charlotte Blake Alston or Charlotte Blake Storyteller or whatever, and the algorithm will send you the links.
Yeah.
And you can go to the site, and you can, actually my full bio is on that page, and I try to be good and diligent about updating the site and what's coming up. So there are a couple things up on the site.
Yeah.
But the music thing, we come by honestly, and I think for me, where everyone considered to pursue a course of study in music, I'm really the only one who did not. We did family programs as children. Yeah. My dad, though, could not carry a tune from the living room to the dining room in the paper bag. So we used to ask Brother Man if he could do lip sync, please. But my father was the one who had the passion for language and literature. My dad, my parents married in 1944. My mother did not have a full-time job until the early 60s. My dad was a mailman, so he literally and figuratively carried a wife and 5 kids on his back in the rain, the snow, the hail, the sleet, got bit twice by a dog. But he was not just a mailman. He had these very personal, interactive relationships with his clients on his route, and that's a whole nother story. But at Christmas time, for example, I mean, he would punch a clock at 5:30. Did that for over 30 years.
In the morning.
Yes, get home around 2:30. Sometimes take a second job. He would eat, take a nap, go out to a second job if we needed extra money. But at Christmas time, he didn't come back till after dark. But a lot of the clients along his route would invite him in for, no, we can't sell this to the U.S. Post Office. No. That give him a little sip.
It never happened.
And put a little money in his pocket. He would come with his pockets full. They loved him. The one time in 33 years my dad missed work, out sick, one time. He had a slip disc. He worked out of 30th Street. So many people called the post office to find out what happened to him, that they gave out our phone number.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a whole nother story. But my dad would come home. He was an incredible guy. And right now,
such a blessing to have stories about your parents, about your fathers.
And a lot of people don't have that. And I have the letters they wrote to each other when he was in the service. So I'm recording those letters now. Yeah. So one of them was very detailed, which led my son on a tear of research, which led us to taking a flight on a B-29 bomber. But anyway, yes. But my dad would, when he didn't have a second job to go to, would eat a snack, take a nap. After dinner, he would go up in my parents' room and close the door, and that was his time to write. He carved out time consistently to write. So the closed door usually means keep out.
Yes.
But I was such a daddy's girl that I would open the door, close it, sit down on the floor just to be in his space. And I knew this was his quiet, so I wouldn't say anything. I would just sit there. And he'd be on the bed, propped up on pillows, his thighs.
So he did see you.
Yeah, and over time, he began reading out loud what he was reading.
Wow.
So early on, I'm hearing the language of Gwendolyn Brooks and, James Weldon Johnson.
What a rich.
And then he handed me the complete poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Selected a poem, opened the page to the poem In the Morning.
Okay.
Gave it to me to read. I read it over and over and over again to the point where I memorized it at about 6-7 years old. And I think a light bulb went on. And when he saw how quickly I memorized this poem, he started writing little monologues for me to do, and gave me other poems to learn as well. So that's really where the seeds for what I'm doing now were planted. Awesome. And part of the incredible irony of that is, although I am the only one of my siblings that did not pursue a course of study in music, it was the spoken word that brought me back to musical collaborations.
Yes.
The first time I had to narrate or work with the Philadelphia Orchestra, they gave me a score. I had to get on my knees in my dressing room and thank my mother for forcing us to piano lessons, because I don't play with great facility, but I never lost my ability to read and to count.
That's fantastic, yes. Yes.
So it was really both. It was the music side that was my mother, and the literature side that was my dad.
Yeah. Just a real quick thing about Paul Laurence Dunbar. My mother liked him as well, and I remember reciting when Melinda sings. When Melinda.
Go ahead, put that noise, Miss Lucy. Put that music book away.
Yes.
What's the use to keep on trying? If you practice till you gray, you can't start. No notes are flying like the ones that ranch and ring from the kitchen to the big woods. Melinda sings. Yeah.
Oh my
So he
gosh.
just Paul Laurence. I really believe he was a genius
Oh yes.
at a very young age, and I think what made his work so attractive to me as a child was the choices he made in representing what was really an oral dialect or an oral language. So it wasn't the exaggerated writing of an author like Joel Chandler Harris, who did the Uncle Remus tales.
Okay, yeah.
Paul Laurence Dunbar, I mean, for example, if you say, come on over here, Sharon, how do you spell that? How do you represent that on paper? Chilren? Chillun? How do you represent that? So his representations of this language that evolved from a people who came to these shores with their own languages, their own language structures and articulation patterns, was closer to me as a child to the language, the melody, the rhythm of my great aunts and my great uncles from Virginia. It looked on paper just like the way they sound. So that's why I don't think I had difficulty reading the dialect when I saw it on paper.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Charlotte.
But yeah, so I
How rich is this conversation?
Cut my teeth on Dunbar.
Yes,
Dunbar as a child. Yeah.
Now let's talk about your mom for a minute, because I'm looking at this wonderful photograph of her, and then you started to tell me something. I'm like, let's just put this. So talk about her.
So my mom was born right here in Philadelphia, in South Philly. Her parents came up from Southern Virginia. Her mother got married at 16 years old. I've got some old pictures here. Maybe when we're done, I'll show you photos that go back to 1916. So my grandfather was 10 years older, but my grandmother used to always say, I got married at 16. I'd never do that again. I thought to myself, well, I guess you won't. But so my mother lived in South Philadelphia. They lived on Montrose Street for a while, and then eventually on South 21st Street. But my father... we found this out later. So the image that Loretta is looking at is a photograph of my mother in Philadelphia City Council chambers. She has an award in her hand. That was 1957, and she was 1957's Philadelphia Mother of the Year. And as I said to you earlier, I still have the news article story that says Negro wins Mother of the Year. So Negroes are mothers too. Oh my goodness. So we found out later that my dad had written a letter about all of the things my mother was involved with. So she was the church organist, but she also was president of the Missionary Society. She was one of the founders of the Philadelphia Association of Organists and Choir Masters, which is an organization of African American organists and choir masters.
It still exists?
I believe it does.
Okay.
You know, J. Edward Hoy, Never Hester, all of those organists from back in the day were part of that as well. My mother was the president of the Home and School Association twice, so we couldn't get away with nothing. I know your mother. And out of the Home and School Association, there was an organization formed, a community organization, with the school's namesake, the Landreth Neighborhood Service League. And my mom was a part of that as well. We had an aunt who had an illness, who often needed to be hospitalized, and her daughter, my cousin, my mother would just take her in. She lived with us. So my dad had written a detailed letter, and this is years later, when I found the handwritten rough draft of his letter and then the typewritten version that he sent. So this was...
he was proud of her.
He really was.
It sounded like they had this mutual love and respect.
They certainly had their ups and downs for sure, but it's unusual almost in this day that we see two people who make a commitment to each other, who stand
for
firm
better or
in their,
worse?
for better or for worse. Yes, absolutely. So there was one other African American woman who was also one of the contestants, and my mother was the one who won.
That's just brilliant. That's so beautiful.
And we're looking at
that's a circa. It's the
circa 1957. So that was a small photograph that my dad had blown up.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have all of the documents. I have her award stored. There's a picture of all of us that appeared in the newspaper with I had my little brownie uniform on. My mother was very active in the community in South Philadelphia, and that's how they came about.
Now she was still alive when you were doing.
Raymond Pace Alexander, I believe. On
Is
the
it
left.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Was he the first African American judge? I don't know if it's a circuit court or what it was, but anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm looking around, and your home is like it looks like a home of a griot. You've got African artifacts and just all this beauty and calmness.
Thank you.
And just everything's very rich here.
Yeah, this is kind of my everything space.
Yeah.
I
mean, rich
I
in
lived
this
in West
pure
Philadelphia,
way,
but
yes.
I was looking for a place. When I left teaching, I taught for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I taught for over 20 years. But when I stepped out on this path, and bam, all these doors began to open.
Okay.
I gave myself 2 years.
Okay.
That was 30 years ago.
Oh.
And I thought, I prayed to be a net if I fell. And I thought the worst that can happen is it won't work.
I pray there'd be a net.
If I fell.
If I fell.
The net turned into a catapult. So
I love that.
As I was traveling, I wanted something calm to come home to, which is a little different from the aesthetic where I lived in West Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to have a place where family felt comfortable gathering.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large area outside where we could put up a volleyball net, and so we can have multi-generations. I had gone to maybe the third funeral of a relative on my dad's side who said, "Oh, it's just a shame you only get together when somebody dies." So I said, okay, nobody's dead.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do this because we are family. So it was family and close friends, and we came. Everybody brought a dish.
Yes.
Some of us have only children. I wanted those only children to know their cousins and become connected enough with each other, share experiences, eating together, playing volleyball together, playing whatever it is, so that if you have a problem and you're not comfortable coming to us, to the older ones, you've got your cousins in your peer group who are more like their siblings.
That's really
So this house has accommodated that over the years as well. So it's a haven for me. If I need time to just sit and reflect, I don't need to pay some money to go to a resort.
Yeah,
I can go out on the deck.
Right.
It's here.
I'm
This is the space,
going to
so.
sign up though. Come here. Actually, though, I am learning how to have
So I wanted to be a welcoming space, also for people to come into as well.
Tranquility. That's what I see.
Absolutely.
That's
Thank
what I
you.
feel.
Thank you.
It's very beautiful. And I know. I mean, we have so much to talk about. We haven't even scratched.
We haven't started the real interview
Yeah, we
yet.
really haven't.
We'll have to have a part 2.
Oh my
I
gosh.
suppose. Yeah.
Wow. So maybe that's what we might do.
Okay.
Because would you like to share some of your story? Would you like to do a story telling? And I must tell our audience, I am preparing to have a TV show. And it's going to be originating from Philly Can. And you, Linda Goss, and Joss, and as many of my, storytelling griot women that I can find.
There's
that's
some
what I would love
Tahira
to.
Delaware, the Queen
people that I
Jersey.
don't know. So I mean, that's what I want our children to see. I don't think they see enough of our stories. I don't think they get to see enough of us.
I agree.
There's just so much that we can share.
And positivity.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm going to say thank you.
My pleasure.
To Charlotte.
My pleasure.
And
this was a gift today to me.
I'm so excited that I'm here and that she agreed to come on our Safta Speaks Sanity, because again, everything kind of comes back to that balance, that peace, and that's what keeps us sane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be back, and I'm going to hope that Charlotte will come back and share some of her wonderful stories again with us. So thank you for listening. God bless you all. You know what, everybody? Thank you for listening to Safta Speaks Sanity. And I have with me our world-renowned storyteller, griot woman, performer, lyricist, fantastic artist, international star, really, and Charlotte Blake Alston. And she has several upcoming performances that we want you to know about. So Charlotte, can you tell us where you're going to be in Philly and then out of town? So tell us your schedule, please.
Sure. Well, what's coming up first in November is the annual In the Tradition National Festival and Conference of Black Storytelling, and that's actually this year. That conference rotates around the country. We were in Philadelphia a couple of years ago. This year it's in Montgomery, Alabama. Storytellers come from throughout the diaspora to celebrate the African American oral tradition. I'll be performing there. But closer to home, here in Philadelphia in November, I am going to be working with an extraordinary virtuoso. I define her as a classically trained but genre-defying black female violinist. This is a bad sister. That's the way that I put it. So Diane Monroe. Diane Monroe has this is a new project, and it will musically kind of give us the story of the arc of her journey as a black female classical musician. It's called Violin Woman, African Dreams.
Wow.
There will be 2 consecutive weekends of performances at the Cliveden House. I believe that's pronunciation. Cliveden, whatever is your proclivity. November 15, 16, 17. And then November 22nd, 23rd, 24th.
Okay.
So Friday and Saturday performances are in the evening at 8. And the Sunday performances are 3 in the afternoon.
Okay.
You can call the Cliveden House, or you can go on the website. You can Google Diane Monroe Music.com. And Monroe is MONROE. And all of the information is there. It's an extraordinary collaboration with a West African kora player, who happens to be my latest kora teacher, Yakuba Sissoko.
What is that? What is the kora?
The kora is the 21-stringed West African instrument that has been played historically for hundreds of years by the oral historians. So the kora is the instruments that's played when the history is recounted.
So this person is a griot. I mean, this is
yes. Yakuba is from Mali. So she'll be working with Yakuba Sissoko on this project. She's working with an extraordinary banjo player as well. She's working with, there's a string quartet involved, bass player involved, percussionist involved, and spoken word as well.
That is so fantastic.
So I hope that you'll be able to make it. So.
Yeah, now tell us more. I mean, the Cliveden House again. Where is it exactly? So
it's on Germantown Avenue. I'd have to
historic Germantown.
Historic 6401.
Okay.
Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia. Yes, historic Germantown. And it's the historic Cliveden House.
Okay, and those dates again?
The dates again are November 15, 16, 17, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. November 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Again, the Friday and Saturday performances are evening performances at 8. The Sunday performances are at 3 in the afternoon.
Now, before we go, because we kind of left a little bit, can you give us a sample of your brilliance, please? Tell us a quick story, or sing us a song, or whatever you want to do.
Well, I guess I would say if I were to have a signature story, it would be the Cowtail Switch.
Okay.
And if you Google me, hopefully you'll find a link to my TED Talk, and I open with the Cowtail Switch. There was once a man by the name of Ogalusa who had 5 sons and 1 on the way. Now, Ogalusa was known as a great and powerful hunter, and at times he would teach his sons the art and the skill of hunting as they grew older. Well, one day Ogalusa said goodbye to his wife, to his sons. He picked up his hunting weapon, set off down the path to hunt. The sun crossed the sky, grew dark. Sons lay down to rest. Woke up the next morning, the sun began his journey across the sky, and the brothers turned to one another and said, "Our father has not returned." Days passed. Ogalusa did not come back. The sons turned to one another and said, "Our father has not returned." Weeks went by, months, until finally a day came when no one spoke the name of Ogalusa. Well, soon that baby was born. And the child appeared alert from birth, seemed to peer right into its mother's eyes, and ate and grew strong and crawled about and pulled himself up and toddled about the village and observed others in the village, other families, girls with their mothers, boys with their fathers. And when he was able to put together enough words, he turned to his mother at a meal and asked, "Where is my father?" And again the brothers turned to one another and said, "Yes, our father did not return. Let us go and look for him." So they picked up their hunting weapons. They set off down the path Ogalusa had taken. They lost it and found it again, and lost it and found it again. And soon they came upon the rusted hunting weapons of Ogalusa. And not far from those weapons lay what was left of their father. It appeared as though he had been attacked by an animal. And the brothers dropped to their knees and began to wail and to moan. And their grief was so deep The elements heard and took pity and converged and imbued each one with a power. And the first one stood and said, I feel I have the power to reconnect our father's bones. And he stepped forward and set about that task. The second said, I feel I have the power to put together the muscle, the fiber, the sinew. He set about that task. The third said, I feel I have the power to get the blood moving through his veins once again. The fourth one said, I feel I have the power to make his flesh whole. And the last one said, I feel I have the power to breathe life into our father. And he breathed into Ogalusa. And Ogalusa's chest began to rise and fall. And they lifted their father. And they brought him back to the village. Well, Ogalusa stayed in his hut for 9 days, and when he emerged, he had shaved his head, and that was the custom if one was said to have returned from the land of the dead. And a feast was held. A cow was killed, the meat of the cow was cooked, the tail of the cow was given to Ogalusa as a reminder of what had happened. The ends were decorated with strips of leather and cowrie shells and beads, and he walked about with that cowtail switch, thinking of what his sons had done for him, and decided he wanted to give the cowtail switch to the child who was most responsible for his return. So he gathered together everyone in the village, told him what he wanted to do. They began to argue about who should get it. Some said it should be the one who reconnected his bones in the first place. Others said it should go to the one who put together the muscle and the fiber, allowing him movement. Others said it should be the one who got the blood coursing warm through his veins once again. Still others said it should go to the one who made his flesh whole, but still more said it should go to the one who breathed life into Ogalusa. No one could decide. Well, on the third day, Ogalusa reassembled them all and said, today I have made my decision. I will give this cowtail switch to my youngest child. For had he not asked the question, where is my father? I would still be lying cold and stiff in the land of the dead, and it underscored a long-held belief of the people that one is not truly dead unless he is forgotten and never spoken of again. And so it is that we must speak the stories of our history, the stories of our lives, and the possibilities of human understanding may lie cold and stiff in the land of the dead.
Ashe.
Ashe.
That was Charlotte Blake Alston sharing the story of Ogalusa. Thank you, Charlotte.
My pleasure.
Tears in my eyes. And I'm certain that our audience is kind of basking in that beautiful story.
There's great power in the spoken word and power in stories, and that's why they're important for us to continue to tell.
Amen. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Safta Speaks Sanity. Blessings to all.